Hi. Hi there. Happy day. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday, Bintu Agne. How are you? Kay Brown, how are you? Voter 1985. I like that handle, Voter 1985. Hi, Peg Sahagun. How are you? Happy Tuesday to you. Um, I hope everybody's having an A-OK day. I know it's kind of wild out there, crazy out there, exhausting out there, chaotic out there. So I hope we can all take a deep breath, center ourselves, come down from all the chaos that's going on in the news world, try to turn it off for just a few minutes. And I thank you for coming here today. I'm really excited to talk to a very brave young woman who's doing a brave thing on Instagram. Lily Cornell Silver has started this new Instagram interview series. It's called Mind Wide Open, and she is talking to people about mental health, about anxiety, about depression, about feelings, about how we're all doing, and what are the tools we all need, regardless of our age, to get through this time. And you may know Lily from her father, Chris Cornell, who's a very famous musician, but I'm going to talk to her today about her and about how she came up with this idea and about what she wants to do with this idea. And maybe I can learn something as a mother of four. I have a son about her age, and who was a psychology major. And I noticed that my kids and all the young people who come to my home and my table are all talking about mental health issues. They're all talking about anxiety. They're all talking about depression, about uncertainty, about what's going on in our politics, what's going on in our world. So I'm glad you're here today to join us. I have, but I'm looking forward to meeting her, and I am excited, and I hope you are too. There she is. Hi.
Hi, Maria. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. You're such a beautiful, well-spoken young woman. I was watching your series last night, sitting in my kitchen, watching you go through and watching your introductions. And you're doing such a great job with your Mind Wide Open, Lily. So
Thank you.
bravo.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So talk to me a little bit and talk to the viewers out there about how you came up and what does Mind Wide Open mean to you?
Yeah. So I came up with the idea in quarantine as you were just talking about. If I froze. There we go. Am I still?
I think you're having a little bit, you're still there, but you're kind of coming in and out. Can you, maybe you can reboot? I don't know if that's possible. I think, there you go. Are you there?
Is it working? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's working a little bit better. There you go. There's your big
Okay.
smile. I think we got it.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. No, I came up with the idea just because, as you said, mental health is something that everybody's talking about right now, especially young people. And I was really struggling in quarantine with my own mental health, with depression, and with anxiety. And I wanted to create a platform where mental health is something that can be talked about without a stigma and without shame, and where it can be something where resources are really easily accessible. Because I think that's one of the main things about mental health is that it can be so inaccessible to find resources and find people to talk about it with. So
Yeah.
that was my goal.
So you said that you wanted to talk about mental health without stigma. How's that going?
Exactly. I mean, it's going pretty well. I think it's one of the things that I was most excited about was fostering a community where people felt they could talk about it without being judged and where they felt comfortable, being in some sort of online based community where they could just share their experiences and get insight from mental health professionals or hear people they admire talk about it. And the number one response I've been getting is like, thank God you're talking about this. Like, I really needed somebody to talk about this. Or people saying, like, I I watch this with my dad, or I watch this with my daughter, and we've never talked about mental health before. And so this like allowed us to open up a conversation about mental health. And that's something that is like so huge for me. So that made me super happy.
What advice do you have, Lily? Because I have 4 young kids, 23, 27, 29, 30. And there seems to be a lot of angst, as I was saying, in their generation amongst their friends. So help me as a parent. How do you suggest to parents to begin the conversation with people in their 20s about their mental health? Because sometimes you talk about like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? You get good. Fine.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, and sometimes you get that more from boys than with girls.
Right.
So what's the best way you think for parents to begin that conversation about this subject?
I mean, for me, like I come from, I was raised by a mother who was so open about mental health and made me let me know that there's never shame and never stigma around how I'm feeling. So I'm so blessed in that way. But in my second interview, I talked to Dr. Mark Brackett from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and he talks about the importance of children having adult role models in their lives who show them that they can take care of their own mental health. And I think that's one of the main things that young people have a hard time going to their parents for mental health help, because they maybe see that their parents aren't equipped to take care of their own mental health. And so having a parent be an example of that sometimes is I think all that necessarily needs to happen for a child to feel comfortable talking to their parents about it.
I love Mark Brackett. I've interviewed him a couple times. He works with my brother, and he's terrific. And
he's amazing.
Great to get you to begin talking about feelings, get kids to talk at a very early age about feelings.
Exactly.
And I think, sometimes we parents are also struggling themselves, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right. And so do you talk to your mother about, maybe do you say to her, are you struggling? Maybe there's something we have in common. I'm always interested in how we can build conversation across generations.
Definitely. I think something that helps me a lot in talking to both of my parents was being able to talk about their own experiences with anxiety and their own experiences with depression. And my mom tells me all the time, like when I was your age, I was really struggling with my mental health and things were super hard. And that's something that really makes me feel validated and makes me feel heard. But she's someone too who models radical vulnerability, and is able to tell me like, I'm feeling really sad right now, or I'm feeling really hurt right now. And like just being able to model what being open and having like healthy emotions and healthy boundaries looks like has taught me a lot, and has let me know that it's okay to be open with her about how I'm feeling, because I know she can take that on.
Did you also discuss that with your dad, who is quite open about his own struggles?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he said something very similar, that he has struggled with anxiety and depression since he was like 12, and it's something that I've come by very honestly. But his, both sides of my family have a lot of, have struggled with anxiety, have struggled with depression, and just hearing those stories from my dad of times where he would have panic attacks and feel like his heart was about to beat out of his chest, or he was going to have a heart attack, and came to learn that that's a panic attack. Like there's nothing wrong with him. That is a chemical imbalance, or that is a response to like an understandably stressful situation. And that's something that he would always impart to me. Like you even if it feels that way, like you're 15, you're not going to have a heart attack, like you're not going to die and everything's going to be okay. So having parents that could tell me like, yes, I know what you're experiencing, and look at me, I'm okay. Like you're going to be okay.
Do you feel, Lily, a lot of pressure with this platform, that people look to you if they may have had a parent who struggled with depression, mental health issues, who also may have passed away like your dad did? Do you feel like a pressure to talk on behalf of everybody who might have had a similar experience?
I mean, I'm sure more than me, the pressures that can come with having a platform and wanting to use that for good. I think it definitely, just knowing like how little people have talked about mental health in the past, now that I've kind of created this platform and people flood into it, like, can we talk about this? Can we talk about that? Like, we need to address all these topics. And I'm like, one person and like I want to address all these topics, but you know what I mean? Like it can that part of it can be hard, but it can also be, it's such a good indication to me that we're moving in the right direction, you know, in terms of like opening this conversation about mental health, because it's something that needs to be talked about. But
what do people tell you they want to talk about? You say you're flooded with people saying, can we talk about
sure.
this? What do they want to talk about?
I've had a lot of people write to me and say that they or people they love have been recently diagnosed with bipolar, whether that's type 1 or type 2. But that's been something I've been seeing like a lot lately. And then also people just like, I'm really struggling with this pandemic, or I'm struggling circumstantially because I've lost my job, or, you know, like I have a lot of people of color writing and saying like this, you know, I'm experiencing a lot of issues with intergenerational trauma, or like the cycle of watching police brutality on the news 24 hours a day is so disturbing. And so there are, obviously when you talk about mental health, there are so many different topics within that need to be discussed. So trying to hit every one of them eventually may take a couple years, but.
So how do you keep your own mind wide open when you have a lot of suggestions coming at you? You know, I want you to talk about bipolar. I want you to talk about racism. I want you to talk about intergenerational trauma. And these are really big subjects.
Huge.
Right?
Huge. Yeah.
And people spend a lifetime studying them, trying to figure out how to give the best advice. What's the right medication? Should you be on medication? What's the avenue forward? So that's a lot of pressure on a young woman like yourself, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. No, for sure. It's beautiful and it's very intense. But I mean, I'm honored that people are like trusting me to give out this information. It's an important part of it for me, but that's why I wanted to loop in mental health professionals, you know, and other people who have bigger platforms who have experienced their own issues with mental health, so that people can hear it from someone besides just me, you know, where I can loop in other people that share their own experiences that I may not be able to speak on as articulately, or not have information on it. So
do you to express themselves when it comes to their anxiety or their depression? So maybe like I have 2 girls and 2 boys, and the girls are more adept at expressing their feelings, or more open, might say, with their feelings. And I think there's not as much of a light on boys and how they may manifest anxiety or depression. Do you find that, or do you talk to young men or LGBTQ people and how they manifest differently?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big topic within mental health, is what mental health looks like across the gender spectrum, and how different identifying people are expected to model behavior when it comes to like their emotions or their mental health. One of my interviews is with my friend Louis Knight, who is a 20-year-old male, and he was recently on American Idol this last season, and he's super amazing. But I was really excited to have him on as someone who can speak as a young male identifying person, and talk to his experience, like, you know, feeling like he had to show up in a masculine way, or not appear vulnerable, or, you know, feel ashamed to talk to his other male friends about his mental health. So that's something I definitely witness amongst my own male friends as well. But more and more, I'm seeing people be more and more willing to be vulnerable, and kind of realize that need to show up as like strong and masculine, you know, and in whatever way that means, is just a societal construct. That's what it is. And it doesn't have to be reality, and it doesn't really mean anything. You know, it's kind of arbitrary. So
I love that, a societal construct. That's kind of different language from my generation, you know. It's a different language, you know, a societal construct across a gender spectrum. So, you know, that's a dialogue that I think parents need to begin to understand. What does that mean, or how do we speak in a dialogue that works for a new generation, and how you see that's a societal construct.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a learning curve for everybody, for sure. But that's where I think social media can be such a beautiful thing, because You know, I've learned so much on social media about so many different like social justice issues and how to talk about things like mental health. And, you know, I think that's where it can really be utilized as a tool for like information and for learning in a
So
super cool way.
I wanted, like, I watched your several of your episodes last
Mm-hmm.
night, and you come across as very confident, very calm, very well spoken, and kind of feels like you have it all together. But I know I went and
Well, thank you.
yeah, but then I went and pulled several articles about you and stuff like that, and where you're very open and saying that you haven't always felt that way. You struggled certainly after your dad passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So for somebody who might be listening to this, or who might be listening to you and is in that place of struggle, and
Mm-hmm.
who feels like, oh my God, you know, I'm not going to get out. I feel dark. I feel helpless. I feel hopeless. One of my parents just died.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to go on. What would you say to them, Lily?
I mean, I mean, that's on just because we were just talking about social media. I think social media is a place where for so long people have been expected or have been putting their best foot forward or only presenting like the best parts of their lives, the perfect parts of their lives. So this series for me is inaccessible to many people.
Right.
But even just if you have one person, you know, like an uncle or a teacher, or you know, like Mark Brackett writes about his uncle, that was such a guiding light in his life, and for me, like my mom, just having one person that I can be like, this is what I'm experiencing, and I just need someone to hear me and validate my experience, and you know,
You, you
make me
just
not feel alone.
you just mentioned grief therapy, and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I've written a lot about grief and about how we're really a grief illiterate society, and that
totally.
people don't really know how to approach people who are in grief. People themselves don't know how to what's sadness. How do you describe grief, and how have you worked through grief, or perhaps you're still working with your own grief?
Sure. I think the number one thing that I've learned in my grieving process is that it's extremely nonlinear. It is like the most nonlinear thing possible. And I just was able to have an interview with David Kessler, who's so amazing, and he worked to help create like the 5 stages of grief that we're all probably pretty familiar with. Um, and so he talks about like, yes, I helped create these I helped create these steps, but by no means do I expect people to follow these steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like these are feelings that come up and they can hit you out of absolutely nowhere, you know, or what feels like absolutely nowhere. So that's the main thing that I've had to come to terms with grief, is giving myself so much grace, you know, and so much empathy, and not feeling afraid if I feel like I'm regressing somehow, you know, because it's not a regression. You're always moving forward, but you're gonna hit highs and lows, and you know, giving myself grace and giving myself space in that way, has been like the hardest but most rewarding thing, I think, in my grief journey.
David Kessler, the book you're talking to is about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book, The
Yes.
Five Stages
Yeah.
of Grief, and he's the
Yeah.
director, for people who might not know, Elizabeth
Mm-hmm.
Kubler-Ross Foundation, who she wrote the kind of quintessential manifesto or Bible on the 5 stages of grief, and David
Mm-hmm.
himself runs that. And I wrote the introduction to the 50th anniversary of that, and then he himself lost a child. Um,
Mm-hmm.
not too long ago, and trying to implement your own grief, even though you may know something intellectually,
Right.
trying to kind of work it as a process is a whole different experience.
Yeah. And that's something, if my therapist was watching right now, she would laugh, because she says that phrase to me probably every single day, is like, it's easy to, you know this intellectually, you know that you're fine, you know everything's okay, but your body and your heart, and your subconscious and your soul are still grieving, and you can't think your way out of it. And I think in our society especially, there's a tendency to try to rationalize or logic your way out of feeling your big feelings, and that's something that we need to move past, I think, as a society, because it's not healthy.
Well, that's great. Well, Lily, there's a lot of messages on here. How wise you are for your age. You're on the right path. You're on the path of greatness, as a couple people here said. And I think it's so wonderful, really, truly, to be having this conversation. When I was your age, nobody spoke about mental health. It just wasn't on the table at all.
Right.
I think people would talk about mental health in terms of somebody having an addiction issue, but otherwise it was, something that was in the closet, really. So I think bringing it out particularly for young people, allowing people to see a path where they can talk about anything and see you talk about anything is a great service.
Thank you so much. No, I feel like if I can use my experience publicly to help anybody, that's all I want to do.
Well, your mom, bravo to your mother, because I read about her, and that you give her so much credit, I think is really beautiful. And I know your dad would be certainly incredibly proud of you. So keep up the good work. I want to mention again, it's called Mind Wide Open. Lily
thank
Silver. It's an Instagram interview series. So if you're my age, you can watch it. If you have kids Lily's age, you can watch it. You can watch it together. And we're going to put this up in the Sunday paper so people have, I think it's always a great way to just start a conversation about our mental health. And I always talk about the benefits of therapy a lot. And hopefully we'll see a democratization of that a little bit, so people who need it and can't afford it will have the ability to do so. So blessings to you, Lily. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Okay. Bye, sweetheart.
Thanks, Maria.
Okay. Bye-bye. What a wonderful young girl she is. Wow. She's I watched her, several of her interview series last night, and she's so well-spoken. She's such a good interviewer. She listens. You get the sense that she's learning and that she really is trying to use her platform for good. And as we always say at the Sunday paper, she's using it to move humanity forward. So I'm that just made me feel really good. The news of the day made me feel terrible, and that interview made me feel really good. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Lily, for making time to talk to us. I told my young son, who's 23, that he should do an Instagram series like introducing my generation to cool people. But I can introduce you to cool people too that aren't my age. So we just did that. Okay, Lily, thank you all so much. And we will see you back here some other time. Okay, thanks. Bye.